The Realtor180 Podcast, where valuable conversations and industry experts collide. Let's dive in and transform your business today.
I am really looking forward. I feel like this episode
I'm always looking forward to recording.
I feel like this episode, though, is my wheelhouse. Like,
okay, this is going to be all about you because this is my weakness. This is your strength. So I'll just put it out there. I'll own it.
So let's get rocking and rolling.
Let's do it. The art of the follow-up. Now, before you mentally check out because you think this is only about sales, stick around because it's not. Anytime you want to sell your ideas, hire an employee, pitch an investor, whatever you can think of, it's always about the elegant art of following up. On that note, let's get started. I'm Cielo de la Paz, and here we have with us today, as always, Mr. Kunkler.
Mr. Kunkler?
Yes, Mr. Kunkler. Do people call you Shawn or Kunkler?
That's so random.
Does anyone call you Kunkler?
My mom calls me Shawn. Actually,
Your dad calls you Kunkler?
No, actually, growing up, believe it or not, my mom called me like Kunkler, or she would call me like affectionate variations of it, and a nickname that I hate. And
everybody hates their nicknames as a kid.
It's totally true. But my dearest friends call me Kunkler.
That's cute.
Yeah, it's kind of funny.
It's very like Top Gun. I don't know why. I don't know.
Goose, Maverick.
That is, although those are their last names. But yeah, I get it.
What do people call you, Mrs. C?
I get called C a lot because people can't pronounce my name. So like, just call me C. That's fine. But I think people who are cool, I have to say, like I define them as cool.
Yeah.
They call me C. Like, hey, C, what's up?
Oh.
The cool kids call me C.
I got you.
That's right.
I got you. I'm picking up what you're throwing down.
So the problem, and I can talk all about the problems. This is my jam right here. Following up is very hard to do. And I have to say, people don't do it. I think it's very overlooked because it's uncomfortable and it's scary because reaching out, because when you reach out and especially following up implies that you were turned down. Rejected already to begin with. I mean, that's how I look at it. And I know I don't look at it like that anymore. But initially that's kind of like, well, I was already given a no. You know, why follow up?
Do you know my pet peeve?
What?
I hate, loathe. And it happens all the time in multiple industries. When you either get a phone call or an email.
Okay.
And the subject line is
following up.
Yes. And then they open with literally, ready for this, verbatim.
Just following.
I was just following up.
Okay. You've told me this before, and I am now, whenever I'm about to say that, and I think of you as like, okay, I should think of another way to say this.
And for the love of all things natural, if you take nothing else away from this episode today, is do never start with I'm just following up. It's so gross.
This is a huge takeaway.
So
don't start with just following up.
Here's what it says to the recipient. You know, my bank account's a little bit low and I'm looking for my next check.
Oh,
do you have it?
Oh.
It doesn't feel good.
Yeah,
it's just as a recipient, and especially now that I'm calling attention to it, you guys will notice it. It just doesn't have that warm and fuzzy. Yeah. And we will absolutely share with what to do and how to do it. But that's
I would love to hear. Okay, well, what do I replace it with then? So let's talk about that later. But first, let's talk about why people don't do it and the pain. And I'd love to go over my pain because I think I'm very sensitive to rejection, and when people say no, I feel rejected. Especially when I first did course launches. Yeah. So when you do a course launch, the way I do it is I email everyone in my list and I invite them to my webinar where I teach them something, valuable. And then I say, if you want to learn more, I do have this course. And then from there, people can buy it while they're on the webinar.
Yeah.
And so from there, that's kind of like that was it. And I didn't want to come back to and email them and say, hey, by the way, were you still thinking about it? Did you still want to buy my course? I just felt really uncomfortable because they were on the webinar and then they decided not to buy. Yeah. So why am I harassing them? I just kind of felt that way.
Well, and it's, hey, did you still want to do this? It comes across as it's not a power position.
No, it's not.
The wrong
it's not.
frame.
And I feel like it's the wrong mindset, but I'm just telling you, when I first started out, that's how I felt about the idea of the follow-up. I've since changed my mind, and we can talk later about how much of a difference that's made to my business, and how actually important it is to do the follow-up. But we'll talk about that later.
And I think that's the biggest problem is the follow-up is your activity.
Yes, it's on you.
It's your activity.
Yeah,
that's not what you're doing or the other person is receiving.
Okay.
And there's a separation between the two. Like, your action item is to follow up.
Right.
The other side has to receive the benefit of you showing up.
Yes. Okay. This is a great way to kind of separate those two things. Very true. Very true.
And this is not just sales.
Mm-hmm.
This is any relationship. Any relationship
absolutely
requires a follow-up.
Yeah.
Because, like, if you think about your best friend.
Yeah, you got to give them a call every now and then.
But you guys didn't become best friends literally the moment you saw each other.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
It took a minute.
It did.
And it took a few months to build.
Yeah.
It's like this thing.
It's not like you're instant BFFs.
Correct.
Yeah.
And all of those interactions,
yep,
like it or not, those were follow-ups.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I have to agree. The people, and especially now that, like the people we went to college with and kind of everybody moved away, the ones I've stayed close to or have kept my relationship with are those that keep following up. I have to say I suck at following up because I get so busy, but I am lucky that I have friends that do, that reconnect. Yeah. And I think that's what keeps a relationship.
Following up is like watering a plant. If you never do it, it dies.
That's why I have a lot of dead plants.
Well, that's your problem now.
I'm sorry.
You're not following up with your plants.
Oh my God.
Like, hey, I'm just checking up. Do you need water? No, we actually need water. Don't tell me that. Don't ask me if I need it. Just give it to me.
Give me the water.
Because I actually need it.
So thirsty.
So I think we've kind of beaten that. But before we move forward, there's three things that any sale, let's just put it in a sales brain, have to happen before the purchase or whatever it is going to proceed.
Okay.
The very first thing is they either need to...
We all know that at the heart of a realtor's business is the referral. My question to you is, are you proactively building out your trusted referral network? My goal is to connect our community with top performing agents across the country. To join our exclusive community, visit www.Realtor180.com and click the Join Our Network tab to connect.
No, they need to know you. They need to know you, your product, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have to get on the radar. That's step number one.
Right.
2, you have to build a relationship for them to like you.
Yeah.
That's
they have to welcome your follow-up.
Correct. Like they have to like if you're just gruff and raw and that's not who
they're not gonna
they are on the other side. They're going to be turned off.
Right.
So you want to turn them on.
Yeah.
And then the last phase of that is the trust phase. So they first need to know you, then they need to like you, then they need to trust you.
And then they'll be open for the follow-up. Is that what you're saying?
All of those pieces are
all together.
The follow-up.
Gotcha.
Like that's what you're ultimately trying to do.
Right.
And the way that you do it, it's case specific as to what the end strategy is. Like if you're just trying to build a relationship or if you're trying to execute a sale, it depends on what you're trying to do. But those 3 elements have to be there.
Right.
Like people don't, and some people will move through that, the know, like, and trust. They'll move through that much quicker than others. And especially if the sale is a much lower price point or it's easier, we'll just bypass all of that because the pain of loss is so low. But if it's a significant purchase, let's say a car.
Yeah, there's a lot of following up or a lot of like
building
and touch points. Yeah. And don't they say in marketing that it takes 7, or now I think it's 12 touch points before somebody will actually pay attention and purchase from you?
Like in a sales seat, it typically takes 7 follow-ups or overcoming 7 objections before you can actually move somebody to a close.
Gotcha.
So, and I think 7 is a low number.
I think these days with so much coming at us, it's probably going to be higher.
Correct. So
that's why I think 12 is the new number.
I would not disagree with that. Yeah. In addition to, you need to make a lot of contacts in order to get to that phase of any transaction.
Right. So we talked about the pain, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Why people don't do it. I know why I didn't do it was I was rejected, and then I'm really afraid of being rejected again. I mean, how do we get over that? Like, how do we get over that fear and just come back, you know, and touch base again rather than saying follow up?
I think it's twofold.
Okay.
I think it's one, in my opinion, in my experience, is bring value forward. One. And you can only do that by sincerely listening and understanding who the person is on the other side and what is going to help them through the next phase. Yeah. That's one. The other thing is to realize and to understand that, as cliche as it sounds, it's a numbers game.
Yeah.
Not everybody is going to be predisposed to like you, to buy your products, or to move to the next level.
Right.
And knowing those numbers, like just going back and reviewing them, in most cases, in most industries, you need to add 100 people to your hopper.
Yeah, and it's a percentage of that usually, right?
It's usually maybe 2%.
Yeah, especially if it's like a cold audience. I think it's a 1% conversion. So just knowing that number. So I think if I could get into how I got over it, that's definitely one of the things where it's definitely a numbers game. If you have that data in the back of your mind, knowing that, no, not 99% of people are going to say yes.
99 are going to say no.
99% are going to say no. So you don't take it so hard. So that I didn't take it so hard, knowing that it's not just me, it's everybody. And this is just kind of how it is, that, only 1% are ever going to say yes, especially if it's a very cold audience. You're going from zero to, trying to sell your service. So knowing that, I think, is definitely very helpful.
Absolutely. If you go into any situation, any sales, or like you're trying to sell your idea to an investor, you're trying to find the perfect employee, whatever it is, it's a numbers game also.
Yeah.
And going into it, when I sit at the sales seat, I know that 97 people are not going to be predisposed to buy my product. Right. And so I'm only looking for the 1 to 3%. Yeah. So is it personal that 97 people, 98,
it's just like it wasn't
don't want it?
The right fit. That's right.
Yeah, it's like when you sit down with your kids and you put a puzzle together, right? Yeah. Is it scenario 1 or 2? When the 2 puzzle pieces don't fit, do you dwell about it and cry about it and then just try to force them together? Or do you go, hey, they don't fit, let me go find the one that does?
Yeah. In fact, I will have like 10 pieces lined up that I think might fit, and then I go, nope, not that one. Grab another, no, not that, because sometimes it's a blue sky and they all kind of look the same. Yes, exactly.
And
it's a good analogy.
And if we can pull the emotion out of it and get into literally and keep it very casual, but it's literally a puzzle and it's a numbers game. Yeah. And every time you pick up a piece, it's not going to be a perfect fit the first time out of the gate. Don't worry about it. Yeah.
And okay, I don't know why this just came up to like dating. It's very similar. And I know
100%.
Men approach it definitely like a numbers game. And I didn't realize this. Anyway, for women, I think it's a little bit different, but I know that I have many.
You've kissed a lot of frogs, is what you're saying.
It is actually a numbers game, because you're like, one of these got to work out.
Yeah, and imagine this. Let's flip the script. But you went on a first date and it was good. Let's say it wasn't phenomenal, it wasn't bad. And then let's say 3 days later you got a call, and this was the call. Hi, I was just following up. How gross is that, right?
That's true. So for all of you in the dating phase of your life right now, don't do that.
So sales is a relationship.
Yeah.
Like I just want to like hit this point home. It's like dating.
Yes.
And don't open the conversation with, hi, I was just following up.
I was just following up.
It's so gross. But listen.
Gross is such a strong term, but
it is.
There's a better way you can do it, for sure.
There's always a better way. So not that long ago, I actually was looking at different cars.
Okay.
And I test drove a car.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
And it was a mediocre experience. And it was a really nice car. And a couple of days later, I got the, hey, I'm just following up. And I just, it's so cringeworthy. But
I think you're making everybody really sensitive to that.
Good.
Now.
I really want to hit this one home.
off.
Okay, so let me share with a strategy that will feel a little bit better.
Okay.
Let's say I'm looking at a car,
Yes.
right? And let's say I'm looking at a specific sports car in a specific color with specific features, right? Like I want a sunroof and I want this, I want that, right?
Right.
The other person on the other side should be listening and taking notes and remembering these specific details.
Yeah.
Now, instead of calling me and saying, hey, I'm just following up.
Yeah.
Call me and say, hey, Shawn, this car in this color with these features, the one that you're looking for.
It's available now. Found one.
Hey, I just found one for you.
Yeah.
What's your interest level? You still thinking about it?
Yeah.
That feels so much better.
Then, hey, I'm just following up.
Correct.
Still want a car?
Like, and then, like, here's the a different frame. Like, did you want me to have it shipped up, or do you want to come and test drive it?
Yeah.
You're going for a soft close, but you're building a relationship because now, as the recipient, I think, wow, that dude actually heard what I said.
Yeah.
He was really looking proactively for that thing that I wanted.
Right.
He came back to me with value.
Yeah.
And that's important.
Yeah.
Like, I feel appreciated. I feel like
I think that's what it is.
I'm starting to go from like to trust.
Right.
Like I'm starting to like this person and I'm starting to build a little bit of bond of trust.
Right.
And that's so incredibly important.
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, both ways where I've been followed up with and I've followed up. I think a lot of it was both times it was they heard me or I heard them. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of like, let's kind of work through it. And it wasn't that, hey, I'm just kind of checking in. It was kind of like, oh, by the way, so the one where I was followed up with, I had said no to enrolling in a program. Mm-hmm. It's like, it's just not for me. And then they were like, okay, when would be a good time? And it was like a month later. And a month later, she calls back.
Ooh, nice.
And the way she started, it wasn't like, hey, I'm just following her. It was like, hey, how's your business going? And it was kind of like a friend checking up to see how it's going, blah, blah, blah. And I guess, if it really sounded like she heard me, what I was going through. And she's like, oh, so it sounds like you might need this. So let me tell you a little bit more about the program again. And she kind of picked some of the things. She's like a brilliant salesperson. This was like thousands of dollars worth of product. And I was like, you know what? I'll do it. And I ultimately bought into the program.
And did you hear that subtle distinction at the very beginning?
Yeah.
It felt like a friend checking up on me.
Yeah, exactly.
That right there is the beauty of the follow-up. So her activity was to follow up with you, but her action item was to actually check in on you as a friend.
Right.
And that moved her to the category of like, and you started to trust her.
Right, exactly.
And that's when the sales started to proceed forward. And then with that, there's 3 columns of trust.
Yeah.
Like there's 3 likes, there's 3 no's, there's 3 trusts.
Okay.
1, it's with the individual.
Uh-huh.
2, it's with the company. And then 3, it's either with the product or service.
That it's going to help you. Right.
In each of those, it has to go through that cycle before the sale will be made.
Okay.
And now within that, everybody's at varying levels of degrees within a 1 to 10.
Right.
And some people will speed through some parts of it more than others. And it always depends on the complexity and the price points and things like that.
Yeah.
But every sale has to go through those 3 phases. And I love that person did that.
Yeah. I have to say, though, okay, I am not a brilliant salesperson. know this. I kind of am awkwardly getting better at it. I'm surprised I even have a business. No, I think I've definitely come around. I had a lot to learn. But what I'm gonna say is, for those that are as awkward as I am, and that can't do that like fancy, approach people in such an elegant way like you do, or like that salesperson did, just the act of following up in general is good. Like, even if you're awkward about it, I think
sure,
you should still do it. And here's a testament to my awkward follow-up that I did that led to great, amazing things. One of the best things where I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I followed up, because I wasn't going to. I felt so rejected. I was like, fine then. Years ago, I'm a big fan of Creative Live. Like, I love everybody. Masters of photography are on Creative Live. People I look up to. And I was just like, oh, maybe they want someone to teach filmmaking with the iPhone. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. So I emailed them with this, like, hey, by the way, I know this, blah, blah. And I threw in Stanford in there, hoping to impress them. And they're like, no, we already have someone that did. I was like, how is somebody else doing it? This is such a niche thing. I'm like the only person that's like, sorry, no.
Oh,
Wah, wah, wah. So then, like, definitely a year goes by, right? And I'm just like, I finally saw them. I was like, oh, but they don't have anybody that teaches editing on the iPhone. So I email her back, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be so annoying, because she already said no and blah, blah, blah. Should I even remind her that I already emailed her, or should I not? Like, should I pretend this is brand new? Like, these are the things going on in my head.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'll just remind her that we chatted. And then it was an awkward follow-up. It's like, hey, by the way, last time you said no, but this is a different slant to it. You don't have it. I checked your program. I stalked all your classes. And then she was like, yes. I was like,
nice.
I was like, no way. She's like, yes. In fact, we have photography week coming up in October. Do you want to teach during that time? That was like the best time to teach, because you have all of these masters come to the Creative Live studio, and I actually fangirled, got to meet them. Okay. So I was like, amazing. And then even a bigger audience comes to watch photography week, because, it's like the special week. And I got to be part of it. And I was just like, I can't believe this is happening. It was like, I met, all these cool photographers.
Yeah.
I was like, what am I doing here? Huge imposter syndrome, by the way. And then you're teaching it live, and there's like, seats of students in front of you. And I was like, all this happened because I followed up.
Fantastic. I
Yes.
love that. That is so good.
Yes.
But what I really loved about that is you genuinely thought, I'm going to dissect it now, but you genuinely thought, all right, so I hit a wall.
Yeah.
Like, I'm either going to go under it, around it, or through it.
Yeah.
Like, you didn't give up.
No, I didn't.
You're like, oh, it's a big wall, I quit. So you didn't give up, which I love. And then the second part is, well, I can't provide value in this category, so
Yeah.
how do I provide value? So you
Right.
did your homework,
Yeah.
researched it, figured out an avenue in, and then attacked it again. And
Yes.
I love that. Like, that is
Oh, yeah.
so genuinely awesome on so many levels, because
Yeah.
most people look at the first obstacle as a failure.
As a rejection,
And
and
they
then they
quit.
stay with it. Yeah.
And it's not always about just closing the sale.
Oh,
It's sometimes about, it's the end result is knowing that you can do something for them
yeah.
and just being persistent. It's
Yeah,
kind of
as-
like if your best friend for I'm sorry if this is such like a dark analogy, but if your friend is inside a burning building and there's a door, you're either going to go through it or
Find another
or you're going
door.
to climb up, you're going to find a ladder. You will do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
And
I really
having-
wanted to be on Creative Live.
yeah, and that's fantastic. And
Yeah,
I know
it was-
that episode that you were on, it was phenomenal.
Yeah, and it did so well that they even asked for me back. So I didn't even have to
Nice.
follow up. They followed it with me afterwards. So I had another class on my own. So that was really awesome. So I love that story, and I always think back to that story when I get shy.
Yeah.
And and I don't want to follow up with, there's a director from Hollywood that, been kind of touching base with here and there. So I just remember that, and I was like, okay, like it might feel awkward, but there could be good things that come out of this. So let's just do it.
I completely agree. And you reminded me of episode number 2, where we talk about it doesn't have to be perfect.
No.
You just need to do it.
Yeah, you just have to be genuine.
Be
you know,
genuine.
And yeah.
And I remember for a while when you were filming, you would keep a picture of your best friend next to the camera.
Yes.
So it would keep you in mind to treat everybody with that same level of love and respect.
I do that all the time. Yeah, when I'm filming or when I do a webinar, you know, like when I do these webinars occasionally to talk about my course, and I don't want it to be pitchy, and I want it to remind myself that if that was my friend on the other side and I know that they need this, how would I, you know, I don't want to just take their money to take their money. I want to make sure it's something that they know that they need. Do you know what I mean? Like it's it's kind of a different mind frame. It's like,
that's what it is.
You know, like I want to see if, you know, teach you this, and if you think you need it, and, you know, anyway. Yes.
And that's my point.
Yeah.
Through all of this, and I know that I hit it home of how much I just despise when somebody says I'm following up, but the true power is when you really genuinely care about the person on the other side, and then you genuinely are trying to figure out how to help them.
Yeah.
Solve whatever problem they have. And the only way you can get there is by genuinely listening to where they're at, what they need, and then taking a different approach.
Yeah.
And it does not open with, I'm just following up. It starts with blank.
Yeah. I'd like to point out, because there's two different kinds of follow-ups, and I feel like it's easier to follow up when you are dealing with an individual, right? So if you have a client, like I was actually speaking to a real person at Creative Live, but it's a little bit harder when you have a list, right? So your email list, it's hard to personalize. So do you have any tips there?
Yeah, I do.
First, don't start with, I'm just following up.
No, like this is, we're now getting into marketing.
Yeah,
a little bit different, but granted, it totally fits.
Yeah.
So I'm a realtor, and I'm based out of San Francisco, and I focus on the Bay Area for transactions. With that, the number one mistake people make when they're following up is they don't segment their list. What that means is
segmenting.
They're not taking the people and putting them into groups.
Yes.
A buyer needs to have a different conversation than a seller.
That's good.
The needs are very different.
Yep.
And the conversation is different, right? The third group, and I get this all the time, is realtors. Like, why are realtors adding realtors to their sellers list?
Yes.
The things I care about are not what your sellers should be caring about. So why are you communicating the same way with me?
Right. That is a good way. So it brings us back to what you said earlier, is trying to assess the needs of the person you're communicating with. And segmenting them out is kind of your automated way of assessing different needs and putting them in different buckets.
Correct. And in that scenario, the individual groups are having different conversations in their head.
Yes.
My messaging needs to match that conversation.
Yeah.
And where people go astray with the follow-up is it's the wrong message to market match. It doesn't match. And they're trying to hit the wrong points home that don't matter to that group.
Yeah.
And that too is the follow-up. And I'm sorry if it sounds preachy, but this is from a sales perspective, this is when all of it starts to fall apart.
All right. So for those that are fairly new and don't have a huge list, I believe it's still worth it to segment. Once you do start finding out that information, because I know when I first started out, I didn't know much about who was on my list, to be honest with you. But once you do start figuring out what are the different segments, so obviously I have like clear ones, those that are my students and those that are not my students. There's two completely different messaging, right? Those who saw my webinar and those who didn't, and those are different as well. So yeah, that's a really good way to bring it up. So for not in person and over digital communications and in, groups of people, segmenting is a way to assessing their needs and addressing them different and following up different ways.
Correct. And it's
very good.
And again, the follow-up, the art of that is, how do I provide value? What's important to them, and what problems do they have, and how do I solve it or help them solve it?
It's kind of like what we said in our last episode when we were talking about perfection is if you make it about them, it makes it way easier. And I think this will be the thing. It's never about you. It's always about, well, there's a way I like to think of it anyway. Because I get when it's about me, then just everything goes wrong.
Yeah.
So when you think about
me as well,
when you think about how can I serve them, what do they need, and how can I provide value, then it's just so much easier to do anything.
I completely agree. And when I talk to clients, I am focused on them and what their needs are, and how do I put my needs behind theirs.
Yep.
They're the priority. And the way that I wired myself is to lead with relationship.
Yes.
And to treat them, it's really funny, but I try to treat them like my mom and a celebrity.
Oh, hey, that's a good way to
Celebrities take priority, right?
Yeah.
And you will do whatever it takes to protect your mom.
Absolutely.
And I always think of, especially in with real estate sales, which I get is a little bit different, but I think of, I don't want this transaction. I'm not transactional. It's not this one-off thing.
Yeah.
I want to be there in 10 years, 20 years, when you guys decide to sell again.
Yeah.
I want to be there when your kids want to buy a home, and I'm the guy that you trust.
Yeah, I think it's really important to...
And if you genuinely lead with relationship, and it doesn't matter if you're selling a car or a widget, lead with relationship and the business will follow.
Yeah.
And every time you watch all these movies about like Boiler Room and Wolf of Wall Street, it's when they put their needs in front of whomever is when it all fell apart and the feds came in and raided them.
Okay, so
in
order for feds not to come and raid your business,
put the relationship first.
All right, and with that, next week we are going to have another great episode. We will be talking about how to time block your day, and this one will be interesting because Shawn has a different way of time blocking from how I do it.
Oh,
so
you say we have differences?
Oh my God, what?
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of Realtor 180, where industry experts elevate your business. Be sure to subscribe and share this episode with a friend. Until next time, keep thriving.